Hi, this is Simon Ensor, and this is Virtually Connecting, and we're over in Finland, in Jyväskylä, I think, and we're here for the Eurocall Conference 2018. So what we're going to do, as usual, we don't have a lot of time on site, is I'm going to ask the people who are on site to introduce themselves, and then we'll move on to the people who are virtually participating, and then we'll talk about what's going on there. So over to you.
Well, let's have the guest of honor. Shall we just go in turn? I'm Louisa Hashi. Nice to see you all. I work at Meiji University in Japan, and I'm on the board of directors for the Japan Association for Language Teaching, and I'm very, very happy to be here. It's my 4th Eurocall conference.
My name is Claire Kamsch. I'm a professor of German and applied linguistics, now retired from the University of California at Berkeley. I'm now professor of the graduate school there and enjoying my retirement.
Hello, my name is Jamie Selwood. I'm an associate professor of English at Hiroi in Japan, and this is my 6th Eurocall conference. So very happy to be here as well.
Hello, I'm Lena Kure from Finland, Oulu, about 5 hours on the bus north of Jyväskylä. And I'm a university lecturer at the University of Oulu in English philology. I also teach students who are becoming language teachers.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move along my screen. So Ufuk, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm an assistant professor of English language teaching at Hacettepe University, Turkey, and I'm currently on a postdoctoral research visit at the University of Neuchâtel, Switzerland. I'm doing a little bit of research on online interaction using conversation analysis. This would be my 2nd Eurocall, but I couldn't make it, so here I am.
Great.
You made it.
Hi, I think Simon, you said Müge, yeah? Did I know? You're right. I'm Müge Satar from Newcastle University. I'm a lecturer in applied linguistics and communication. I'm mainly interested in multimodality, community building, and social presence. I'm the CMC STIC chair. I think I currently am, but might be passing it over after this year's meeting. And I'm also a member of Unicollaboration, and I'm one of the co-editors of the new Journal of Unicollaboration, Journal of Virtual Exchange.
Thank you very much. Katerina.
Hello, I'm Katerina Zourou. I'm in Greece right now, and I'm thrilled by this opportunity that you give us to connect virtually with on-site presenters and scholars. Thanks.
Okay, let's not hesitate. Let's go straight back to Finland. Your impressions. What's been going on?
Okay.
Lots of communicating. Lots of communicating. One of the great things about this conference is that you have break times that are scheduled where nobody is actually presenting, and that allows people to talk about the things that they've just listened to, have discussions about that, talk about things that are not connected necessarily to the presentations that they've seen, just their ideas, their experiences, the weather, which is fabulous, by the way. And I've really enjoyed that. I think that's one of the really, the things we're trying to bring out through virtually connecting, that chance to talk to people about what's going on.
I mean, I know we're having a conversation across technology and across countries, but as Louise says, the opportunity just to sort of talk person to person with someone is an opportunity you don't really get so much, especially with so many people in one place. And Eurocall is a great place for doing that. I mean, just my own impressions, I think that the star of the conference has been the sketchnoting for the keynote speakers.
Oh yeah,
that is just utterly brilliant. I'm sorry, the lady's name escapes me. Linda. Finnish double verify. It's just, I mean,
honestly,
firstly, captured this fantastic keynote speak, and just the accompaniment seemed to encapsulate. It was wonderful.
I don't know if you've ever seen it before and know what we're talking about, but what she's got is a tablet, and she's illustrating, taking concepts that the speakers are talking about, real time, sketching them, and they appear on a screen in front of us. So on the right side, we've got a screen where we see the speaker's slides. And on the left side, there's a separate screen with all of these digital images that she's creating in real time. And in some cases, they actually blend in and the speakers interact with them as part of their presentation. So it's a really unique thing that for me has been very impressive too.
If anyone wants to look, I think it's certainly on the Eurocall Twitter page, and I presume it'll be uploaded onto the Facebook page.
And yesterday's plenaries, the sketch for yesterday's plenary is online on the Twitter feed. I've seen that and I was impressed. I haven't seen Professor Kram's yet, but it is really nice. I thought it was such a wonderful idea as well. And the fact that you're there, you can see it being created at the same time must be quite an experience as well.
That's fascinating.
I really want to use it in teaching. I'm trying to think how I can now put that into a classroom with students, because it's
you've got to learn how to.
That's my problem. I can't draw.
I can't draw, but it doesn't matter if the student is creating whatever they're doing, and then it's a reference point for them, and then you can take them on to a speaking activity, a writing activity.
Oh, you mean the students?
Yeah.
I could do that.
Yeah.
They could do that.
No. I'm a one-trick pony.
I thought you meant as a teaching tool.
No.
It's beyond me.
No. It's a reference point for students. It's got to be able to be used. It's great. That's certainly been my highlight.
Yeah, for me, it's
what is so special in this year conference, because Eurocall is a great conference anyway. Anything which is special or a great idea that you'd like to share with us in this year's conference?
Yeah, I was going to say that in Finland, I suppose that the situation is changing about technology at the moment very much, because schools are becoming old and the connections are getting old. So schools are replacing old technologies, and they are not sort of very homogeneous acquisitions. So there's quite a lot of variety there. So it's quite a challenge. So in that sense, it's very nice to be here at the conference and go and see around what is going on. So.
There's a lot of diversity here this year, actually. I'm quite impressed by the breadth of some of the topics covered. I mean, there are presentations I have no idea what they actually mean, and you sort of go in there. No, you kind of read the abstract and think, I don't really what? And you go in there, and it's a wonderful idea. I mean, some terrible ideas as well, but I'm very, very impressed by how much of how many different topics have been covered, particularly. You go to some technology-based conferences, not so much Eurocall in truth, and it seems a very narrow field. A lot of kind of you see the word Moodle in every presentation, and yeah, indeed, and that hasn't been the case so far. I mean, I know we're still early on, but I have been very impressed with the technology that's just out there.
Yeah, and look, to give an example of something I was really impressed by today, I went to a session at 9 a.m. and two sisters were doing research together about polyglots, and they were looking at how people who are learning multiple languages are doing this outside of classrooms, no connection at all to formal education, and they're making these groups and they're connecting with each other and they're sharing different kinds of learning tools. Even when they're learning different languages, they and different proficiency levels, they're setting goals together and they're motivating each other to do it. And they have these meetups and these challenges online. And it was just fascinating to be able to get some insight into what's happening out in what they call the digital wild. I was really intrigued by it, and I want to find out more and more about these kinds of studies because I'm into learner autonomy, but this is the kind of group that I'm not accessing, and I'd love to know more about it. So one of the things I like to do when I come to a conference like this is go and see sessions that I don't know enough about, that I'm interested in, would like to know a little bit more, instead of sessions that are on things that I think I know a bit about. I will see some of those, but I want to see more on things I don't know so much about and maybe get some new perspectives and ideas or opportunities to consider things that I hadn't really considered. And I've had great opportunities to do that at this conference.
Well, that's lovely to hear. I also think learning in the wild is so interesting because as co-researchers, we have the means to track learners as they're doing things on their mobile phones and the kind of different things they access. Whereas in face-to-face language teaching, you don't really have that extra overview. You don't really know what the students are doing outside in their own time. So it's a fascinating area, and it does have lots of links with autonomy, definitely. I've been following the Twitter feed, and Alyssa just posted a very small clip of Professor Kramscher's talk, which was extremely interesting. It is where you talk about how Facebook and communication has become the Facebook mode of communication, that everyone posts things, whereas we have all the semiosis and different modes and people can interact with. And I was like, okay, I wish I could hear the rest of this. So if you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit of what you said there, or what was the main thing for you? Yes.
Well, I guess I'm from a generation. I mean, there are many of us here who have known the world before the computer came in. Having been at MIT when basically email was invented, where it was called a word processor at that time. I remember well the first demonstration of word processing. So I have gone through the different uses of the computer as an unlimited database that we were all very excited about, because it would make all the knowledge of the world basically accessible to everybody. That was a very democratic ideal. At that time, the computer was not yet commercialized, so you could not yet buy things on the computer. So it was the dream of an encyclopedia, basically, at your fingertips. Then came the networking of computers. And I remember well, that was in the early 90s, where all of a sudden computers could be linked to one another. And then we discussed, when I left MIT in 1990, I still didn't have email. We didn't have email in our offices. So it gives you a kind of historical perspective on what it was about the computer that was so exciting. But already at the time, because MIT paid us, the faculty, to take courses in the artificial intelligence language, Lisp, in order to make us understand how the computer worked. And we realized that that language, Lisp, which was the language of artificial intelligence, was not there. It was a language, all right, and we learned it with all the parentheses and all this, but it was not a language to discover a kind of a referential truth or some kind of a truth about the world out there. It was a language to solve problems. And there, from there, then the computer started infecting, I would say, our way of viewing what language is good for, namely to solve problems. So from that moment on, the computer transformed language in a tool to solve problems. And that's how our students nowadays, they learn French, English, or German in order to solve the problems in the tourist world or in the world, in the workplace, in order to gain economic profit. But that was not at all the way language was viewed at the time when you learned language in order to understand poems and literary texts, which was to discover the wisdom in those texts. And so that's what I was trying in my keynote right now, to sort of bring across, not to forget how it was, in order to measure how much we have lost and gained with the pact, the Faustian bargain that we did with the computer.
I mean, technology is there to help us, not to I mean, that's the thing that's been mentioned by a few presenters at the conference about the new Google translation opportunity. And I know Professor mentioned it as well, that is exactly, it's a tool. So that's a concern, because students are just learning, well, they're not even learning, they're just using an opportunity to talk, and it's translated. So what do you learn? You don't, there's no wisdom there. And that is a concern. I mean, and I know it's been I've been to, I can't remember, sort of 6 or 7 presentations that it's been mentioned in. That's what's, as an education community, what are we going to do to actually tackle that? Because it's dangerous, maybe overemphasizing it, but it's certainly a concern.
And what is left for the teacher to do?
Exactly.
Because every single talk always ends up, yes, that doesn't have to replace the teacher.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but what is left for the teacher to do? And it seems more and more that the teacher is required to be an assistant to the computer rather than computer an assistant to the teacher.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Or maybe it's a kind of project leader or something like that.
So an orchestrator.
Orchestrator, yeah.
That's right.
Well, almost like a midwife, that the teacher's there to kind of to bring the learning.
We're going birth.
Well, the one person that doesn't go through that experience, I suppose, not too deep.
But that's the question. Since I'm not American originally, I'm French, I have quite a different view of the role of government, for instance. Government is there for me to protect the people. And protect the people in part against exploitative practices in this world. But in America, government is there to facilitate and to, as we say, orchestrate the running of business.
Especially now.
Which is a totally different view. And it's the same thing now with the computer.
I mean, especially you look at something like Google, and you look at their lack of, for the tax payment, they haven't been paying tax in Europe. Why is that? Why have Google been cut such a big deal? Because there is this Faustian pact that's been made that Google says we will provide this for people, but you have to leave us alone. You have to let us do our thing. And it is worrying because there is no oversight about that.
Yes.
And then there's a question of what happens to the data.
Exactly.
Not a small question.
The Cambridge Analytica and all of that that's happened with the Brexit debate in
what
the UK.
happened? No matter what they tell you, the
data's
data's somewhere, and once that data's there, it's out of your hands.
But every tweet that you write is recorded somewhere.
Oh,
so it's been around.
But look, anything that you're using for free.
Yes, exactly.
You are the product if you're not paying.
Exactly.
That's actually, I think, an important question. This research ethics, for instance. So it seems to be changing. And I've also seen many presentations where data is stored somewhere, and we have new regulations, for instance, in the EU, it's quite hazy what it means in practice.
Yeah.
And
this is a huge concern. I mean, I'm British and I'm against Brexit, and this is a huge problem that we're now going through because of all of this data. We're as part of the EU, we're protected. There are rights there that protect our information and our data and our students and ourselves, and no one has any idea what's coming. And I'm afraid, just like Coach has said, that when business is allowed to run free and governments don't, contain what they can do, then it's a real concern where this is going. You do worry about especially for education, and as Louise said, nothing's free. There's a price for that, and
you are it.
Yeah, and as educators, it's a balance we have to make because obviously we don't want our students to be paying excessively for things they don't have. Yeah, but
are we implying therefore that politicians, when they're elected by the public, are of a caliber to protect us?
Well,
obviously not. If any recent elections has anything to go.
There's a Scottish comedian called Billy Connolly, and he once said that anybody who announced that he wanted to be a politician should automatically be ruled out from being a politician. And I think that's good. So we've drifted off topic here. Sorry.
Yeah. Back to Cole.
Yeah. Back to mobile.
I have a question. As I understand it, the theme for the conference was future-proof cool. Is that right?
Yes.
I'd like you to perhaps just in a few words, what does that mean to you? What is future-proof cool?
To future-proof cool.
What does it mean to you, Teresa?
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Okay, you're not here. What does it mean to you?
Future-proof.
Yeah.
Let's unpack it. What do you think it means?
No future?
It's almost oxymoronic, actually, isn't it? Yeah, future-proof.
The word sustainability has been mentioned time and time again, and having been in education as a teacher for 30 plus years, you know, how do I make sure that there's going to be a generation of teachers behind me if their role has become just the sage on the stage, the guide on the slide, as you say, looking after the technology?
I think that's
How do we respond?
Yeah, that is. We are looking at how, even though we're involved in a technology conference and we all love technology and we all use technology, we're trying to find a role for the educator in the future, as an educator, as a teacher, rather than as a facilitator. And I think that personally, I've cut that thread, that theme has cropped up a lot at different presentations.
But it means that the teachers should either remember or be told what are the ultimate goals of education and the raison d'être of a teacher.
Right, well, that's what Saku was asking yesterday. As he goes around Finland speaking to educators, what is the goal of education, the purpose?
But the answer of American educators will be jobs. I mean, the education system in the US is so linked to the job market that teachers see their responsibility in preparing the students for the job market. Now, the job market is not determined by the educational establishment, but by the commercial and business interest of the business class. So,
as I say, if you look at the three biggest economies in the world, Japan and China, and all of those three countries, their educational system, because Louise and I are based in Japan, are set up entirely for students to go into jobs. I mean, there is. I mean, especially in Japan, one of the issues is the lack of lateral thinking. And that's just.
I have a question. Can I?
Also in Finland.
Not in France. France, not at all.
Sorry. All right. A very short question. Sorry for interrupting. I wanted to ask Claire what she believes is the least explored fields in computer-assisted language learning. What have we almost skipped of attention? What is the topic that is very underexplored, or that we should take some time to inquire further?
Okay, I've got one response immediately. That's what I'm writing my book right now.
Give us a teaser.
When's the publication date?
The answer is symbolic power. Nobody talks about power. Nobody wants to talk about power. Power is meant to remain invisible, undiscussed, and unmentioned. And yet, symbolic power pervades everything we do, and particularly technology. I'm retired, but I read a semester to teach again my big course that attracts 150, 200 students from all over campus on language and power. And I can tell you, we had a ball there. I mean, this year was the best class I've ever had on this topic, because we could analyze from Trump's tweets to the mission statements of Google or Orange or all this. It's laced with power, with power dynamics, power struggle, etc. On the symbolic, because this world has become more. We're consuming symbols every day, the marketing symbols, language being only one. And yet nobody talks about what it does, who wields the power. The way Trump talks is a scandal, because he mixes propaganda, business, pathology, and all this. And this is the way he disorients not only his interlocutors but the whole of American population. Has a method to this madness that benefits, you fill in the blank.
But it's the notion that, and this happened again with Brexit, where experts were suddenly the enemy. If you had any knowledge, if you had any understanding, if you had any insight, suddenly, no.
You need to be a layperson.
You're the elite.
Right.
What they're doing is they're turning anyone in education into elitism, and they're pushing them aside. And of course, the irony, the horror of it is the fact that the elite are the ones who are the trumps, the pushing. Yeah, no, indeed, no, it is. Absolutely. George Orwell was right in the 30s. I mean, if you choose Orange purposely because of its role in French, kind of it's this huge influence in French politics and culture.
I'm surrounded by publicity for Orange, but I didn't know that it was the color of it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
No, it's just because there's been issues with Orange's influence in.
I didn't know.
Oh, I see. Okay, right.
Oh, I didn't know.
There's been issues with Orange.
Yeah, they're effectively they're a secret departmental government in France because they had such of their power and their influence.
But I understand that Orange or Orange is all over Europe.
Yeah, it is.
But is it a French?
I think it's certainly got a French.
Talking of power, can we jump in? You're having such a great time. We would love to be there. Ufuk, you have a question.
That was a powerful jump in. Thanks for letting. Although the talk is and all the interaction is quite engaging, I think we're kind of scaring off people with marketization, commercialization, security problems, privacy, and the power struggles. My question is, I mean, you guys are there in Finland, and Finland is kind of quite has a great popularity in terms of the teacher education system. So do you have like any reflections in the conference, or like any people attending the conference? How are things going on in terms of call and teacher education, and what are your reflections on it during and maybe before the conference?
I attended a school visit on the first morning. So something that they offered this time, instead of just the workshops in the first morning, the conference was an opportunity to go over to a school. And somebody who was involved in teacher education led us through an overview of how the system works here. And we got to go and see a lesson at high school level. Some other teachers or delegates here went to see an elementary school class. And something that really stood out to me was the really small power division between teachers and students here, that there seems to be this much more equal way of interacting with each other, anything from addressing each other by first names to giving the students autonomy in the class when they set exercises. There were many options for the students each time an exercise was set, in terms of choosing their partners and choosing if they want to do it this way or that way. And probably you can speak to this, I'm sure, much better than me, because but for me it was fascinating coming from, the education system in Australia and Japan, where it's rather different.
Yes, I suppose that's one of the things that also I notice when I would go elsewhere, because I mean, when people come to visit, for instance, so they are surprised usually about this relationship between the teacher and the pupils.
Yeah, and I heard the ministry too, the Ministry of Education, not top-down telling teachers you have to do it this way, but more collaborative with teachers.
Yes, and the national curriculum is very broad, so there's a lot of freedom for teachers to create their local curricula.
So you're saying that there's a sort of an equal role in the classroom behind the Finnish education between the teacher and the student, where it's sort of geared towards a collaborative process rather than a top-down. Is that what you saw? Is that the goal? What's the?
I feel it's very important.
Sure, yeah.
But of course, I feel that it's not. Maybe this picture of the education system is also quite rosy,
dramatized.
So
you were sent to the best school, right? in the country, yeah. All the rest are sort of dungeons.
There's certainly a lot to do. Also, for instance, in language teacher education, there is many of the students still, even if we have had technology around for ages, and the students are really eager social media users, and they are familiar with lots of technologies. So still they feel that the language teaching, the focus should be the classroom. So of course it is in mostly at the moment, but they've had trouble seeing that things could be otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I learned was that all teachers here have at least master's level education.
Yes.
Yeah, which is not the case in
No.
many places.
Yeah.
Well, there are some places in the UK where they don't even have an undergraduate level.
But you know, there's that commitment.
Yeah,
Teachers
wow.
are committing to
That's-
this as a profession.
that's-
They're not thinking, oh, I'll teach for a few years while I'm finding something else to do,
But
which does happen.
is the salary reflective of someone with a master's degree in higher degree? Yeah, well, no, but that's,
I didn't know.
but you know the point. You know, obviously, if you're going to school to do a master's, but that's being, you know.
But also, university education is free in Finland. Another thing I found out. So, you know, you're not leaving like you are in the States or Australia. You're not leaving with a debt that you've got to work for the rest of your life to try and pay off.
I mean, I was lucky. I was one of the last ones in the UK to go through free education.
Yeah.
It's
Anyway, those were my impressions from the school visit.
Yeah, no, indeed.
May I just ask you a very quick question? Sorry, I thought it was a quick question about Finland and education in Finland. The way you're describing the classrooms and the relationship between the teacher and the students, and what we were saying earlier about the role of the teacher in COL. What is the relationship between technologies and teachers in Finland? Is there a power struggle between the two?
Well,
in 2 minutes.
There has been research in this area, and it has also been said that even if the technology has been around for a long time, so there is it's not quite broad yet. I mean that the integration of technology to the pedagogic environments is not exactly the same everywhere. So that is something, and I have been doing research on students who are becoming language teachers, and they see that at the moment technology is quite often seen as something fun every now and then. So they don't see it as something that can be used as an important environment or tool for.
So not a core element.
Yeah, it's changing though. So I think this idea is changing.
Interesting.
Well, it's reassuring in a way that there is still a role of the teacher in the classroom. So that's good to know. Not that.
I can't imagine the world with informal education, but you know, like the presentation I mentioned before, there are people out there outside of the formal education system who are doing it themselves.
But what's worrying is, again, you know, you look at the world today, and it's this idea that education is is the enemy. Is you look at the populism, and we've seen this before in history. You know, the first people that are blamed are educators, you know, because they're not teaching what those in power want us to teach, and that's an ongoing concern. And what is our role as a teacher? I mean, we're a language teacher. Is it my role to delve deeply into other subjects? Will my university be happy if I do so? I mean, you want students to have an opportunity to think.
But mostly, at least in the US, educators are seen as tools, instruments to solve the social problems of society, and in particular the employment and job-seeking market. That's not what the role of educators was when it was not linked with the job market. Educators were there to open students' eyes as to what the world is, how it is represented, to open them to art and music and ways of expressing different truths but not for any gain in particular, and certainly not for monetary gain. But nowadays, like the computer, that's what is meant by the computer is a problem-solving tool, and it transforms everybody that uses the computer itself in a problem-solving tool. Humans have become a problem-solving tool.
I mean, like, the first time you arrive in a new place, what do most people do? They get Google Maps out. They don't try and figure out where they have to go. They just, all right, and you follow a blue line on the
right.
Well, not follow it well.
Well, not follow it well. Yeah.
Try to follow the line.
Yeah.
So,
Simon, I'm aware that the on-site folk need to get off. So, do you mind if we round up?
okay, let's round up. Would you like to have one last word to encapsulate your experience? One word from Finland.
A word from Finland.
One last word.
That is doing the rounds on Twitter.
Yeah, it was Masterpiece, wasn't it? No,
Thank you, Masterpiece.
Funland.
Oh,
Funland.
It took off when it started with you, and it's gone everywhere. We're in
Lena,
Funland, not-
one last word.
I'm curious about what is still going on.
Yeah, halfway through, aren't we? Really?
Louise, one last
The
word.
Insightful. I think it's been very insightful.
I
Claire,
think lake.
Lake.
It's a beautiful lake over there. It's just stunning. Yeah, I know.
You could point in any direction and there'd be a beautiful lake, 360.
Yeah.
one last word from you, Claire.
Sorry.
Oh, I don't know. It's European, certainly.
Is that a good thing, though?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good, so, yeah.
That's where I come from.
No,
so.
great.
Thank you very much, everybody over there. Thank you very much for all the virtual participants. That was absolutely great. And we look forward to hearing more from what's going on over there, and also from every point where everybody is participating virtually. Thank you very, very much. And
Thank
have
you.
a great afternoon and evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.